Memoir, The Island of Sad Cows, A Luxury Cruise, Vincent Price, and an Egg McMuffin. In 1984, I produced a short film that began on the Portuguese Island of Madeira off the coast of Africa. It was at the behest of Royal Viking Line, a legendary luxury cruise line, and starred Vincent Price, the art collector gourmet chef Price, not the gothic horror one. But he would do his bit in Hollywood, not on location with us. Madeira and the experience of a pampered luxury cruise were quite distant in both kilometers and culture from my roots. As a child in Minnesota, I remember the thrill of my first entry into Wisconsin. "Do you feel any different?" asked my dad, as we crossed the bridge to the land of lager and hard cheese. Then, to me, pizza and chow mein were exotic dishes. Making a film in the 80s, even a small one, was an industrial enterprise, shipping actors, cameramen, and stylists, as well as crates of equipment and film stock. I'm still making films. Much of that today would fit in a backpack. The challenge was getting all of these people and all of this stuff through airports and the inevitable phalanx of those I nicknamed thwoppers, petty functionaries who emphasized their authority by aggressively thwopping their rubber stamps and documents and passports. That was daunting. Landing in Madeira, Sam, my cinematographer, who had a background as a news cameraman working in unfriendly territories, had a scheme for dealing with customs agents. He created a list of cameras, recorders, microphones, lights, film, filters, literally all of the nuts and bolts, a document as thick and as obscure as Ulysses, embossed with his own fake rubber stamps of authentication. When the customs agent smugly stroked his chin and motioned us to step aside, Sam presented him with his thick tome. The agent, befuddled and overwhelmed, waved us through. Thwop! There's little flat land in Madeira, and its airport is one of the dodgiest on Earth. Imagine an aircraft carrier where one end of the runway drops into the sea and the other faces a cliff. Pilots have to make a visual approach with a 180-degree turn before slamming down on the runway and braking hard. We grasped each other's knees and gritted our teeth as our plane screamed to a shuddering halt. Watching landings here was spectator sport. We settled into a hotel overlooking the airport. At the pool, every time guests heard a plane approaching, they jumped up and ran to the railing to watch the drama. There were a number of French women who bathed topless, and the men remained in their recliners as the women jiggled forward, preferring that scene to the smoking tires of a jet. The length of the runway has doubled since my visit, using steel girders to support a new section. Now big jets can land, and Madeira is more accessible and a popular vacation spot. Before airports and auto traffic, the air in Madeira was tinged with a scent of licorice, or to some possibly absinthe. Its capital, Funchal, got its name from funcho, which means fennel in Portuguese, the ingredient that gives the green fairy its flavor. Fennel grew there in abundance. Then there was the other intoxicating taste of Madeira, a sweet wine called Madeira, or Malmsey. Malmsey was popular among the toffs of Europe and the United States. The first Duke of Clarence was executed for high treason in 1478 by being drowned in a butt of Malmsey wine, or so wrote William Shakespeare in Richard III. Madeira wine toasted the U.S. Declaration of Independence. The beauty of Madeira lies in its steep, forested, hilly terrain and subtropical foliage. The mountains in its interior can reach more than 6,000 feet. It's so hilly that some old-timers never made it to the coast from their villages, even though the island is only 286 square miles. With virtually no flat grazing land, Madeirans built little houses for cattle, so they didn't stray and tumble down the hill. Madeira has been referred to as the Island of Sad Cows. There are lots of hikes there. Some are rugged and strenuous, or you can ramble along something called a levada, which is a bridge that transported water for irrigation. Because of those steep hills, Madeira developed a unique mode of transportation. We tried snowless tobogganing, careening down steep streets in a wicker basket on runners. Carlos de Sesto, guided by men called correrios do monte, wearing white straw bowler hats and rubber-soled boots for traction, rumbled down the steep streets of Funchal. This bone-rattling ride was public transportation from Monte, the top of the hill, to the lower city. Leaving Madeira, I enter another alternate universe, a luxury cruise ship circa 1984. And I once thought Wisconsin was exotic. I made sure my crew was dressed for the occasion. I bought my first tuxedo. Sam went to a thrift store and bought a full tux with tails, a little over the top, but he pulled it off, gliding across the dance floor with his red patent leather shoes. He was the darling of the silver-haired sweeties on board. These days, the formal rituals of cruising are mostly gone. I left my tux at home for my last luxury cruise I took with my wife. There were no formal nights, no big events to prepare for, and we engaged with few people. Passengers tended to travel in small groups or as couples with their own private table. Passengers seemed more comfortable discussing Downton Abbey than living it. As elitist as it was, I missed the days when a maitre d' almost randomly seated me at a table with a scrum of breeds that reminded me of the finals of the Westminster Dog Show. An opera conductor, a man who made a fortune selling Formica, a notorious real estate developer, a best-selling author, an historian, an artful dowager from London who intimated that the reason she traveled was to escape British cuisine. I don't miss the pleasure of sharing mess with New York socialite Leona Helmsley, who had recently been banned for bad behavior. Her most famous quote was, "We don't pay taxes, only the little people pay taxes." Yes, I was punching above my weight, but I shared stories and made new friends. We got off in Barcelona, enjoyed a banquet serenaded by an orchestra at the Ritz on the Ramblas, a similar old-world experience, and a cast and crew party. In 2022, revisiting Barcelona, my wife and I ducked into the Ritz. Same place, but visibly dog-friendly. Back in the USA, I landed at Burbank Airport and was picked up by my chauffeur, a tall, lanky man leaning over the steering wheel of a big black BMW. He ushered me into the front seat, excusing the paper bag there. Vincent Price picked up a bag and the remnants of an Egg McMuffin and tossed it in the back seat. "My guilty pleasure when my wife is out of town," he said as we drove off. Gourmet is what you make it. This is Russ Johnson.